For this final part in the beginner level training series on Powerapps, I'm going to introduce you guys to forms. We are going to set up our form, customize and tweak it, and of course we also want to make sure that if we submit the data, that data actually gets saved in our Sharepoint list. My name is Jochen, I am a Power Platform consultant at Sigeka, and I suggest we start building our form. Let's do it. Hey guys, welcome to this beginner level training series on Powerapps, where I am showing you a lot of the building blocks you can use to develop your own app. And today it is the 5th and final episode in this little mini series. So as always, there is a link down in the video description to the entire playlist. Check that out if you want to, or if you are just here for the information on forms, also fine, because that is our focus for today. Now let's dive back where we left our app in the last video, and that is our new order screen. And I am just gonna make sure we have a couple of items in our shopping basket and then click confirm order, because this of course will trigger our little pop-up that we have built, and this little thing right here is going to be our form. And I say going to be, but I already added the form last time. All I did literally was type in form here and chose the edit form. I haven't connected it to any data. The only thing I did apart from adding it is adding a little border to it by changing these properties, but that is literally it. Oh, and by the way, the reason why I chose the edit form and not the display form is because we are actually going to build a form where our user can input some data into and not just display existing data or whatever, because that's the main difference between these two. So edit form it is, and let's do the first very important step, and that is to connect our form to a data source. So I am going to make sure I select my form and then go to data source here, or click connect to data. It will get you to the same thing, and select in this case my order header data source, because that is my Sharepoint list. And as you can see, automatically those fields that are in that Sharepoint list are added to my form. And a little tip, because I've encountered this a couple of times: if you rename your form after you have added it and connected it to a data source, and I'll do it right now, so I'm going to rename this by deleting the S and hitting enter. As you can see, for some reason this is bugged and the fields literally just disappear. It doesn't matter if you exit the screen and go back to it, they're still gone. The thing that I found that I could use as a workaround, and this might seem silly, but it does the trick: literally just untick snap to columns and retick it. It will say this, but that's all good. Boom, and the fields are back. Little disclaimer, it could be that the order of fields has now changed when that happened, but we're gonna fix that anyway, so I guess that's not really a big of a deal. And to change the order of the fields, or to even delete fields, because that is what I'm going to do, you can simply, when you have selected the form, click edit fields right here. And this will give you a list of the fields that are currently active, or shown at least, in my form. And for example, we have the attachments field, which is the default attachments field on Sharepoint. I don't need it here. I'm not going to use it in my app. So I can simply go to 3 dots here and say remove. It will remove it from the list and from the form. And you could now also change the order of fields by drag and dropping them. You get the picture. It's a very handy menu if you want to reorder fields in your form. But that's all I'm going to do for now in this menu, at least, because the fields we are looking at right now, I am going to use them. However, I have a couple of different scenarios going on here. And what I mean by that is, some fields I actually want to show in the form to the user. Other fields I want to hide. But as you can tell by the little asterisk icons that you can see right here, most of these are actually required fields on Sharepoint. So that means we have to give them a value before we can save and push our data to Sharepoint. And in short, I am going to use a combination of 3 field properties: the default property, the visible property, and finally the display mode property. Let's start with the email field. And the first thing I notice when I click this email card is the lock sign. And that is literally because Powerapps has locked these fields by default. If I want to make changes to them, I have to go to advanced right there and hit this little lock button. Now you can see that the lock is gone and my formula bar opened up, and now I can actually make some changes. And let's just do that. Again, default, visible, and display mode, those are the 3 properties. So let's start with the default property. So in short, I want the user's email to be put in here, but I don't want the user, when he's using the app, actually to see this. I mean, he will probably know his own email, right? So what I'm going to do is say, instead of this item.email, we can use the user formula like this, dot email, boom. So default value is set user.email. Now we can just make it invisible, the entire card, by flicking this little toggle right here. And that's it. The card is now gone. The value is still being filled in the background, but we and the user simply can't see it, which is exactly what I want. Now orderer and order date are the same scenario. I want to fill in the fields with the default value, but I want to show them to the user, but I don't want the user to be able to adjust the values. So what I'm gonna do is default value again. Again, use the user function, but now go for the full name instead of email. And I'm not gonna make this card invisible, but what I am going to do is make it uneditable. Is that a word? I guess it is. You'll see what I mean. I'm gonna click this data field, so not the entire card, the data field, and then I'm gonna go to display mode. And instead of saying parent.display mode, which by default is set to edit, which is show and make the field editable, I don't want that. So delete this and simply say disabled. So now the user will still see the field. He will see that the field is also filled in for him or her, but he won't be able to edit the value. Next up is order date. It's exactly the same scenario as the orderer card, but I already clicked the unlock sign off camera. And for setting default date, we have to click the data field itself and then go to default date property. And instead of saying this item.order date, a very handy function in Powerapps called today. There we go. So we have set a default value, which will always be filled in for us. And all that is left to do is again go to the display mode of the data field and set this display mode to disabled again. The notes field I will tackle last. Let's do these two first. Total amount. So unlock again. Go to the default property and say, and this is just a variable that we are using, which is also shown here, by the way, the $6 that you see. It is called var global total price. There we go, 6. And just like the email card, this can be completely hidden from our user. So properties, visible toggle, gone. The number of items is the exact same scenario. Unlock it. Let's go to the default property. And this is our other variable that we are using here, the 3 items that you see. So var local item counter, that's the one. 3, there we go. Back to properties, visible toggle, gone. The status field is the exact same scenario, but this is a choice field on Sharepoint, and that's kind of special. And also because I want to add a little bit more logic to it, because I want to achieve that if our order total price, so in this case $6, if that number is higher than 99, I want the order that we save to Sharepoint to have a status of needs approval, which is one of those choice options on Sharepoint. And if it's less than 99, a regular order if you will, I just wanted to have the status ordered. So to change that, first step, unlock it. Then I'm going to go to my default property, and instead of this item.status, which again is the default value, I'm going to paste my formula. And I could get all technical about this, but this is simply the way for a choice field, how you have to put it in the formula bar. So this is an if statement. The logical test is my var global total price, which is literally the total price of my order, higher than 99? If it is, this is the expression that is going to be executed, if you will. And that is simply saying, okay, then give this choice field on Sharepoint the value needs approval. If it is less or equal than 99, so if this expression evaluates to false, this will be executed. And it's the same thing, but it's of course just the ordered value of the status field. So the default value is set, and just like the 2 previous cards, we simply want to hide the card altogether. And the final field is the notes field. And this card, in fact, is another scenario because it's not a required field, so it can stay empty, so it doesn't need a default value. That's 1. 2, I want the user to see the card in the app, so the visible property can stay as it is, being enabled or on. And 3, the display mode, I'm also gonna leave it as it is because I want the user to be able to fill in their own notes in the app. So I don't want to gray it out like the orderer and the order date. Basically, I want it to be exactly how we see it now. So I don't really have to change anything, but I'm going to either way. And the only way I can do that is by going to advanced and unlocking it, of course. And there are two fun properties that I want to share with you because this is a multi-line field on Sharepoint. I also want this to be a multi-line input field in our app itself. And on the data field, not on the entire card, but on the field itself, there is a property called mode. And by default, this is on single line, but I can also say text mode dot multi-line. And the second thing I'm going to change is the hint text property also on the data field itself. So search for hint text, there we go, which is empty by default. And I'm just going to say use this field for your notes, please. And as you can see, it's literally a hint text so that we give some explanation, some instructions, if you will, to the user so they know they can actually use that field for their notes. So we have 3 fields on our form. Of course, this doesn't have to have 3 columns then, and we can simply change that by going to the columns property on the right here on our form and change this to 1. Final tiny change, let's just select the notes field and give it somewhat more room. Beautiful. Final part of the training coming up, we want to make sure that if we finish our order that our data actually gets saved on Sharepoint. So let's do that. And first thing we want to do is kind of set a reset point for our form. And what I mean by that is the notes that the user enters in his previous order don't need to be stored for the next order, right? They can probably be other notes or empty, whatever, but they don't need to be the same notes over and over again. So we kind of want to reset this form at a given point in time, and that point in time is at the home screen, this point. When it becomes visible, our home screen, that is when I want to reset the notes. Not just the notes, the entire form. So in the unvisible property of our home screen, this is what we have so far. So we're doing some data refreshing. Well, this seems like the perfect time to reset confirmation form as well. 2 very simple functions being new form and then the name of my form, which is this one in my case. Close the brackets, semicolon. And the second line, also a super simple function and very similar, reset form, with the same form name in between the brackets. And you might want to play around with these because depending on your scenario, it's not always that you need both of them, but I do want that because reset form also makes sure that those default values that we have set for all those fields are also filled in or reset, if you will. So I just want to make sure that that happens in my scenario, so that is why I'm going with new form and reset form in the unvisible property of our home screen. So now that we have chosen the reset moment, if you will, for our form, it is time to implement the logic to make sure that our data gets saved to SharePoint. And basically there are 2 big steps here. First of all is find a place to actually submit the data to SharePoint. That's one, which obviously is going to be our finish order button. And the second step is to tell the user if it succeeded or if something went wrong. And that is something that we can do if you select the form itself. There will be a couple of properties here saying on failure and on success. Those are the ones that we will need. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We will start with the finish order button. And this one is really simple. On select formula, by default it has the value false, which is do nothing. We don't want that. We want to do something, all right? And I can just go submit form. And then, of course, the form name again. There we go. And that is literally it. That is all that I want the finish order button by itself to do, because the continuation of that process will take place in the code that we put in the on failure and the on success property of the form itself. Let's do just that. Scenario number 1. Everything goes according to plan. The data is smoothly saved and pushed to SharePoint. All is well in the world. What do we want to happen? Well, whatever it is, we're going to have to put it in the on success property of the form itself. So let's navigate there first. By default, again, set to false, which is do nothing. But we want to do 3 things. First of all, I want to close this pop-up as we have seen in the last video. Again, playlist is down in the description. Click the link if you need to, but I'm just going to briefly explain it. We have created this pop-up in the last video, and the visibility of the pop-up is just determined by one local variable, which is true or false. So literally, when the data is pushed to SharePoint successfully, we want to close the pop-up because its work is done. So this will be the first line of code, update context, and I'll just put some comment in there. height confirmation pop-up. Second thing that I want to happen, I want to navigate back to the home screen because basically our order process is done at that point in time. So we can navigate to home screen. And you guessed it, navigate to home screen, close brackets. And the final thing that I want to happen is that the user gets a notification that he or she at least knows that the data was in fact saved to SharePoint. So notify user and the formula notify open brackets your order was successfully saved, comma, and the type of notification is success. 3 simple lines of code, but in fact they will do everything that I want to happen when the user clicks finish order and everything goes to plan. And you know what? As a reward for you guys still being here, I'm gonna show you an advanced tip. Let me add a little bit more to this last piece of code. Bam! Because what we can do when an order is successfully submitted, we have some data of that order because SharePoint kind of gave a response back to the app saying everything is okay. And it also provides the app with some data of that saved order. And you can see if I remove the ID and do the dot again, these are all the fields that are available. Basically, there is kind of a copy of that record that has been saved on SharePoint in the last submit variable. Is it a variable? It's kind of a variable. So now the user will not only be notified that the order was submitted successfully, they will also receive the ID of the actual order. So I think that is awesome. And that is it for the happy flow. Of course, chances are that something goes wrong and that the data doesn't really get saved for some reason on SharePoint. And that is something that we have to foresee in the on failure property. Again, by default, it just says false. And this is way more simple than our on success story because all I want to do when something goes wrong, I just want to alert the user. I don't want to hide the pop-up. I don't want to navigate to wherever. So all I'm going to do here is notify something went wrong while saving your order, comma, and this is not a success notification. Obviously, this is an error notification. There we go. That's the only line of code I want to have in the on failure property. If something goes wrong, we're just going to alert the user. And that's it. And something that I almost forgot to tell you, in my case at least, my form needs the default mode new, not edit. Because we're not editing an existing record, obviously, in our order header SharePoint list. If we are going to use the form, we are actually going to create a new record. So default mode has to be on new. Almost forgot that. So a big moment because we are going to test if we can actually finish an order. Let's do it. Create new order. Let's just go for a simple order less than $99 because I also want to test that order logic in the status field that we did. So confirm order. This is just a simple order. Those are my notes. And finish order. Boom, your order with ID 4 was successfully saved after the pop-up disappeared and the app navigated back to the home screen. I think this is a success. But if we want to make sure there's only one place to go, and that is SharePoint. And yes, sorry Bob, order with ID number 4 placed by my user. The notes are this is just a simple order, 3 items, $6, and the status is just ordered. Now let's try to get a needs approval record in here. And we can of course do that by doing the exact same thing, only instead of a simple order. Let's go for the big boy right here, an immense amount of paper. And you know what? Let's order 2 of those, please. Confirm. And my note will be, I really need this paper. Thank you. Finish order. Order with ID 5 successfully saved. So far, so good. And if I go to SharePoint and I hit refresh, order with ID 5, I really need this paper and needs approval as a status. My work here is done. So there you go, a fully functional office supplies ordering app. I really hope you enjoyed this beginner series. I sure did. As always, and I know I keep repeating myself, but this will be the last time, I promise. There is a link to the entire playlist of this training mini series, so if you want to check that out, please do. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please use the comment section as well. That is what it's for. And of course, do not forget to like the videos and hit that subscribe button if you are interested in more content exactly like this. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.